Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson today. We are going to listen to 10 most dangerous kids currently rotting in jail. Oh, okay. And I have dogs.
The courtroom was tense as 17-year-old Roxana Sikorsky's life hung in the balance. It was a day of reckoning for the young girl who had plotted a horrible crime against her own family with her adult partner. The circumstances that led up to this point began in October 2014, when Roxana was only 15 years old. She woke up in the middle of the night with a terrifying idea. She had attempted to take the life of her younger brother because she was consumed by a sick desire to destroy her parents
My
and
service
siblings.
dog. Lulu.
Fortunately, her plot was foiled, and her family survived the
She
experiment.
comes over because she
Lorraine
doesn't like
Sikorsky,
me.
Roxana's mother,
She
summoned the
doesn't
court
like
to
the
address the
Irish
court
boy.
before the judge
Okay.
began reading the punishment.
She
She
wants
made
all
an
the
impassioned
attention.
appeal for compassion on behalf of her adopted daughter,
My Lulu.
overwhelmed by conflicting
She wants
feelings.
all the
She's in
attention.
desperate need of continued psychological help.
Okay, let me just change this so
Sentencing her as an
everybody
adult
can
and
see
subjecting her to the harsh realities of incarceration
why I'm
not only
always looking
shattered her
down
fragile
and
world.
fighting.
Is this
Okay,
fair?
that's
Jeffrey,
because
Roxana's adopted father, also voiced his displeasure with how the trial
she
played
has
out.
become so
Knowing his daughter's
needy
frailty, he
lately,
was concerned about
as
her
if I'm
safety
not
in
paying
Chicago
enough
jail.
attention. We
She's
gotta
young.
go
She's
away, don't
vulnerable,
we,
he said
Lulu?
emphatically,
Lulu,
portraying an image
we
of
have
a
to
frail
go
little
away.
girl entangled
You
in a web
and
of
me.
darkness. The courtroom was left to deal with the case's intricacies.
Me and
Roxana's
you.
traumatic upbringing was uncovered when it was found that she had suffered
You
as a
and
youngster.
I.
She was diagnosed
Okay?
with reactive attachment disorder as a result of
You
her
stuck
trauma,
by
a
me.
mental disease that
You're my
affects the capacity
baby.
to build
Yes,
emotional
you
ties
are.
with main
You my
carers.
baby.
This
You
revelation
my
brought
baby.
another depth of comprehension to the
She's my
horrific
service
events that
dog.
occurred.
Okay?
Roxana expressed
So,
real
she's
guilt in
special.
court, apologizing to her parents for not
It's
being the
like,
daughter
okay,
they had
I'm just
hoped
gonna
for.
go through
The gravity of her actions had now dawned on
bust
her,
through
and the
this
ramifications were
table.
all too clear.
There she
Meanwhile,
goes. See?
her adult
She
lover,
wants
who
to
had
be,
supported and
okay,
enabled the
right
conspiracy
under
to take the
me,
lives of her whole
on
family,
my
had
feet.
already been sentenced to life in
Oh,
prison
we
after
haven't
being
even
convicted
been
on all
listening to
7
that.
counts. Roxana's involvement in the crime was evident, but her age and problematic history obliged the court to explore the prospect of rehabilitation and atonement. Despite that, Roxana was sentenced to 10 to 20 years in prison, which would take up a considerable amount of her young life. The court decided that Roxana committed a terrible crime, and she had to serve her due punishment. This decision also made her an example for all the other juveniles who might think about breaking the law or hurting people. Number 2, Antonio Barbeau. Antonio Barbeau is one of 2 youths charged in the heinous crime that took the life of an elderly woman. In a Sheboygan County courtroom, Antonio faced his day in court. As the judge prepared to pronounce Barbeau's punishment, the courtroom was filled with a tangible sense of expectation. The chilling facts of the crime stunned the close-knit town of Sheboygan Falls back in September 2012. Antonio took the life of 78-year-old Barbara Olson, his great-grandmother, in her own house with a hammer and hatchet. Barbeau reached a decision that sent shockwaves across the courtroom after months of legal processes and close examination. In an unexpected turn of events, he pleaded no contest to first-degree intentional homicide,
Your breath smells
which
like
means
fish.
that he accepted the conviction, but did not admit guilt, changing his plea from not guilty by reason of mental sickness. The unanticipated twist was part of a plea bargain
I give
that
her
would have a big
massages.
influence on the rest of his life. Barbeau struggled to demonstrate regret during his sentencing hearing as the weight of his conduct weighed heavily on him. He began to address the court while standing before the judge, his emotions plainly suppressed.
Okay.
However, he stumbled and was unable to continue
Was that
because he
good,
was overcome
Lulu?
by the gravity
Was
of
that
his
good?
punishment. Realizing the
Was
intensity of his
that
client's
good?
situation, his
Okay,
defense
can I take
counsel
a sip
stepped
of
in
my
to give the
coffee?
remainder of Barbeau's statement on his behalf. I'm aware that I don't express my feelings. I don't know why, but that doesn't mean I don't. I took someone's mother, grandmother, sibling, or friend. I had no authority to do so. I've ruined so many lives because of this one decision I made. He sobbed after hearing his sentence and placed his head on the desk. This demonstrated that he was concerned about how he had damaged his own life, as well as the lives of others. Following the trial, A psychiatrist shed light
Come
on
on,
Barbeau's
and
turbulent
rub your
history,
neck.
stating that cognitive impairments caused by a traumatic experience when he was just 10 years old
Yeah.
may have played a role in his behavior. Barbeau's life took a terrible turn when he was hit by a car at such a young age, forever affecting his destiny and molding his choices. The judge handed down his decision, which was to condemn Antonio to life in jail with the possibility of release in 36 years. As the courtroom collectively absorbed the sentence's weight, the heaviness of those words lingered in the air. He was allowed the prospect of freedom, however, only in 2048, and that's very far away. Number 3, Jessica Caroline. Jessica, who was 17 years old, was at the center of a terrifying tragedy that took 2 lives. She slammed her automobile into the Wyoming Medical Center, leaving a trail of destruction in her wake. The implications of her actions would change the lives of everyone involved forever. Jessica stood in front of the judge, her guilt weighing heavily on her. She pleaded guilty to 2 charges with a sorrowful heart, admitting the irreparable loss inflicted by her irresponsible conduct. As the severity of the situation lingered in the air, the courtroom was filled with a solemn mood. The circumstances leading up to the tragedy occurred on what appeared to be an average day. Jessica was driving eastbound on 2nd Street, close to the Wyoming Medical Center. However, catastrophe struck when the car drove off the road, striking a sign in front of the hospital before slamming the car into the structure itself. The result was disastrous. 2 lives were tragically lost as a result of the crash. Brandon Avery and Amanda Strickland, both 27 years old,
Okay, everybody could
passed
go
away as a
now.
result of their injuries in the collision. Jessica's
Okay,
actions had
I did
terrible
my job.
ramifications throughout the
Now
community,
I'm
leaving a
cooking.
great sense
I'm
of
cooking. You
sadness
want
and
that
loss in
special
their aftermath.
Thanksgiving dinner?
An unexpected revelation
Huh?
was made during the
Huh?
investigation of the
Okay, I
event.
thought so.
Authorities discovered an air duster can inside the car, leading them to assume Jessica was under the influence at the time of the incident. Jessica admitted to consuming the chemical, which caused drunkenness during an interview with authorities.
Wait.
Old passed away as a result of their injuries in the collision. Jessica's actions had terrible ramifications throughout.
Okay.
Heavily on her. She pleaded guilty to 2 charges with a sorrowful heart, admitting the irreparable loss inflicted by her irresponsible conduct. As the severity of the situation lingered in the air, the courtroom was filled with a solemn mood. The circumstances leading up to the tragedy occurred on what appeared to be an average day. Jessica was driving eastbound on 2nd Street, close to the Wyoming Medical Center. However, catastrophe struck when the car drove off the road, striking a sign in front of the hospital before slamming the car into the structure itself. The result was disastrous. 2 lives were tragically lost as a result of the crash. Brandon Avery and Amanda Strickland, both 27 years old, passed away as a result of their injuries in the collision. Jessica's actions had terrible ramifications throughout the community, leaving a great sense of sadness and loss in their aftermath. An unexpected revelation was made during the investigation of the event. Authorities discovered an air duster can inside the car, leading them to assume Jessica was under the influence at the time of the incident. Jessica admitted to consuming the chemical, which caused drunkenness during an interview with authorities. The presence of this hazardous inhalant exacerbated the tragedy by demonstrating the role it played in compromising her judgment and motor abilities. It was also discovered that the automobile was traveling at an alarming speed of 76 miles per hour at the time of the crash. This irresponsibility further exacerbated the seriousness of the situation, as the high speed raised the likelihood of a disastrous conclusion. To make matters worse, neither Jessica nor the victims were wearing seatbelts, worsening the injuries inflicted in the incident. The courtroom was filled with mixed emotions as the judge read the punishment. Jessica's destiny was decided when she was sentenced to 12 to 16 years in jail. Jessica's face was marked with sorrow as she addressed the court, overwhelmed with regret. The trial served as a sharp reminder of the disastrous repercussions of rash judgments. Lives were lost, families were devastated, and a community was left to deal with the fallout. Number 4, Bever Brothers. The Bever family was pushed into the national limelight in 2015 in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, when a horrible act of violence took the lives of 5 family members. In the middle of the darkness, 2 young survivors emerged from the ruins, bringing to light their harrowing story. When officials discovered the remains of 5 members of the Bever family, an unfathomable tragedy began. An infant girl and a young girl were discovered alive and clinging to life despite the bleak sight. These courageous survivors played a critical role in bringing justice to their families and shedding light on the heinous atrocities that had occurred. In an unexpected turn of events, the elder girl gave a terrible statement, naming her own brothers, Robert and Michael, as the perpetrators. Robert, who was 18 at the time, and Michael, who was 16, were later arrested and charged with the atrocities committed against their family. The entire population was stunned and horrified, unable to grasp how such a catastrophe could occur. During the trial, Robert's evidence revealed a sinister purpose. He admitted to having a diabolical ambition to become a legendary serial criminal. This revelation sent shockwaves throughout the courtroom, leaving all in attendance dealing with the darkness that had seized Robert's psyche. He pleaded guilty to the allegations against him in 2017 and was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of release.
Whoa.
The gravity of his acts, as well as the irreparable harm he had inflicted, were eventually met with appropriate retribution. Similarly, Michael supplied frightening testimony that bolstered the case against him. He was convicted by a jury of his peers and sentenced to 5 consecutive life sentences.
Whoa.
As the courtroom went silent, the enormity of his actions became clear. Michael's first smile, contrasting with the subsequent wiping of his eyes, perplexed witnesses who tried to comprehend the emotions hidden beneath. The Bever brothers maintained an unpleasant demeanor throughout the trial, demonstrating a disturbing lack of remorse for their conduct. Their emotional distance only added to the court's confusion and attempted to understand the motivations behind the inconceivable actions perpetrated against their own family. The courtroom became a platform for revealing the worst aspects of human nature, questioning the fabric of society's conventions, and exposing the depths of human depravity. The Beaver family's tale would live on in the collective memory of Broken Arrow as a somber reminder of the frailty of familial relationships and the deadly force of unbridled evil. Number 5. Sierra Halseth. The fate of 2 young people was decided in a courtroom full of tension and sadness. Sierra Halseth, who was 16, and her boyfriend, Aaron Guerrero, who was 18, stood before the judge as their heinous crime was revealed. Sierra took her own father, Daniel Halseth's, life. The crime was horrible and inhumane. The teens attacked Daniel Halseth with a knife. They even attempted to tamper with his body in a gruesome attempt to disguise their tracks. They took his automobile because they wanted to get away from the repercussions of their conduct. This terrible event occurred in April 2021.
Oh, let me go.
The man who should have been her defender mentioned. As the reality of the situation set in, the anguish and bewilderment in the courtroom were evident. Sierra and Aaron took the weight of their actions bear down on them as the judge read the punishment. Life in prison, with the possibility of release after 22 years. The enormity of their crime, the harm they had inflicted, and the shattered lives they had left behind, required the most severe sentence the law could levy. Sierra and Aaron were found guilty by District Judge Kiara Jones after both confessed to the crime. The maximum sentence of life in prison was imposed, with a chance of parole after 22 years. As the punishment was read out, the courtroom held its breath, each syllable ringing with the gravity of their acts. Sierra seemed disinterested, her demeanor indicating she didn't care. Aaron, on the other hand, appeared to be breaking down under the weight of his guilt. What had pushed Sierra to such a level of detachment stayed in the thoughts of those there. How could one discover the ability to commit evil within their own blood? The media frenzy surrounding the case had reached a fever pitch outside the courthouse. YouTube channels investigated the crime's specifics, providing their own interpretation and opinion. The narrative
I'm not
caught
going
the
to
public's
scratch
attention
down
with
there.
its stunning twists and unfathomable depths. But amid the
Because
media circus, it was critical not to
Eric
lose
does
sight of the
act
great
opera.
sadness at the
Doesn't
heart of the
mean I have to
situation.
do it to you.
A family was devastated. A father's life was senselessly stolen, and a community was left reeling from the effects. The focus should stay on Daniel Halseth's memory and the long road to healing that awaits those touched. Sierra and Aaron were taken to begin serving their sentence in prison as the courthouse doors closed. The weight of their actions would follow them, reminding them of the irreparable damage they had inflicted. If atonement could ever be discovered, it would be a long and painful journey.
I can do whatever you
Number
want me
6,
to do,
Philip
right?
Chisholm.
Come on,
Philip
down.
Chisholm, when he was only
Down.
14 years old,
Boo-boo.
horrified the
Down.
nation with his horrible deeds, which
Okay,
would permanently change
so-
the lives of all involved. Colleen Ritzer, who was the victim, was not just a math teacher, but also a role model at Danvers High School. She had no idea that her own pupil would be the
Trying
one
to
to
push
blame
it
for taking
further
her
away.
life.
Eddie, you know
The
you
weight
get
of
pet
Chisholm's
pet
savage and
24/7,
senseless crimes
honey.
echoed through
Okay,
the
so
courtroom
no.
as Salem Superior Court
It's your
Judge
turn
David
right
Lowe
now.
delivered the punishment. Colleen Ritzer's
Okay,
life of
both of
quiet
y'all
heroism
go.
was recognized by Judge Lowe,
Go.
who emphasized that the waves of this tragedy will never stop smashing on the coasts of those who are involved. The gravity of Chisholm's crimes required a firm and unwavering response from the legal system. Chisholm's defense counsel attempted to construct a mental illness narrative aiming to explain the unexplainable crime. However, the jury flatly rejected this claim, holding him completely accountable for his acts. The court proceedings subsequently resulted in Chisholm receiving a life sentence with the chance of release after 25 years. In addition, he was sentenced to 40 years in prison for the cruelty and robbery counts he faced. Chisholm's mother, Diane, cried silently in the midst of the traumatic courtroom scenario, struggling with the realization of her son's conduct. Overwhelmed by sadness and guilt, she used the occasion to express her most profound apologies to the Ritzer family, admitting the irreparable pain inflicted by her son's irrational decisions. Her grief filled the air, emphasizing the devastation caused by Chisholm's acts on both families concerned. Throughout the trial, Chisholm maintained a stoic demeanor in front of the court. His visage resembled that of a poker player suppressing his emotions. The lack of sorrow or empathy sent shockwaves through the courtroom, leaving many in attendance perplexed and looking for explanations. How could a little child who appeared emotionless perform such a heinous deed without flinching? The case of Philip Chisholm is a chilling reminder of the evil that lurks inside even the most naive people. The terrifying nature of his actions and his lack of remorse cast a shadow over the courtroom, raising concerns about the intricacies of the human brain and the possibility of evil manifesting at any age. The courtroom became silent as the gavel dropped, sealing Chisholm's destiny, the weight of the tragedy lingering in the air. Number 7, James Fairweather. James Fairweather is a deranged youth with a strange fixation on becoming a famed serial criminal. He was sentenced to 27 years in jail for perpetrating the brutal deaths of 2 innocent people. Tragically, both victims passed away at his hands, permanently marking him as a perpetrator of horrible crimes. James Atfield was the first victim of James's violent brain damage and was attacked by Fairweather on March 24, 2014. James struck again 3 months later, this time targeting Nahid Al-Manea, a 31-year-old Saudi student at the University of Essex. His streak of violence, however, was halted when he was captured in May 2015 while plotting a third attack. He was without remorse. He freely claimed involvement in both crimes and pleaded guilty to the charges. James committed these horrible atrocities at the young age of 15 while attending Colchester Academy. His adolescent years were blighted by bullying, mainly because of his big ears, and he encountered additional challenges at school, including dyslexia and autism. While these difficulties shed light on his emotional issues, they do not justify or excuse his planned savagery. Surprisingly, throughout his confession, James expressed little sorrow, detailing the facts of his actions with neither empathy nor regret. James sought an appeal based on his age and mental competence at the time of the offenses in an attempt to lessen the harshness of his punishment. His argument, however, was eventually denied, emphasizing the enormity and depravity of his acts. The court ruled that his offenses were too heinous to allow a compassionate approach, upholding the gravity and relevance of the punishment he got. The James case is a sobering reminder of the evil that exists among young minds. His alarming desire to become a well-known serial criminal highlights the risks of unrestrained dreams and the potential for unspeakable devastation. The denial of his appeal demonstrates society's dedication to holding people accountable for their acts, regardless of age or stated mental impairments. Number 8. Nehemiah Grigo. Nehemiah Grigo performed a horrific deed at the age of 15 that shattered the very foundation of his family. He took the lives of his parents and 3 younger siblings in a horrible tragedy that occurred in October 2015, subjecting them to a savage attack with 2 different weapons. The enormity of his deeds sent shockwaves through the neighborhood, leaving everyone astonished. Recognizing the seriousness of his misdeeds, Nehemiah bravely pleaded guilty to his involvement in the catastrophic tragedy. A family court judge first requested a penalty appropriate for his age because he was a youngster at the time of the offense. In 2019, the prior decision was reversed, and Nehemiah was punished as an adult. Nehemiah elected to comply with the police without the presence of a lawyer during his detention. In his honest confession, he claimed that his acts were motivated by a deep hatred for his mother. The brutality of the crime, along with the fact that there were several victims, justified a sentence of up to 120 years in prison. Nehemiah was eventually sentenced to 3 concurrent life terms, with credit awarded for the 6 years and 285 days he had previously served. This meant he'd have to serve at least 30 years in jail before being eligible for release. Nehemiah stood quietly as the punishment was read aloud in a courtroom filled with emotion. While his stoicism may have concealed his inner agony, he did take the time to express regret and apologize to his family. According to reports from the proceedings, Nehemiah was soft-spoken and profoundly impacted. This portrayal contributed to the tragedy's complexity by questioning society's comprehension of the causes behind such heinous crimes. While it is hard to fully fathom the depths of Nehemiah's anguish and the psychological circumstances that prompted him to commit such a heinous crime, his apologies hinted at his sorrow for the irrevocable loss he inflicted. The story of Nehemiah serves as a striking reminder of the fragility of human life and the unpredictability of human behavior, especially among young people. It emphasizes the critical need for comprehensive mental health support systems, early intervention, and family intervention programs to identify and address the underlying issues that can lead to such disastrous consequences. Number 9. T.J. Lane. T.J. Lane is a former Chardon High School student who ruined many people's lives when he committed a horrible act of violence at the age of 17. On February 27th, mayhem ensued when Lane took the lives of 3 Chardon High students and injured 3 more. Witnesses reported Lane having personal issues with one of his victims since they shared the same school bus. Lane, who was armed with a .22 caliber pistol, attacked the students, leaving carnage in his path. Lane's actions had serious consequences. 2 of the injured pupils were hospitalized, with one of them ending up permanently paralyzed. The physical and mental scars inflicted on the survivors left the whole town in shock. Lane was first jailed as a juvenile due to his age at the time of the crime, awaiting the authorities' decision on whether to try him as an adult or a kid. His violent attack had taken the lives of Danny Parmenter, Russell King Jr., and Demetrius Hewlin, robbing them of bright prospects for the rest of their lives. Surprisingly, Lane showed no regret for his conduct. He donned a blue button-down shirt to court, only to expose a disturbing message scribbled on a white t-shirt. That word not only described his actions, but also increased the trauma for the victim's family. When given the opportunity to speak in court, Lane's remarks simply aggravated the victim's family's anguish. Instead of expressing regret or seeking forgiveness, he made rude and insulting statements, exacerbating the wounds. He even laughed callously at the mother of one of his victims as she bravely presented her story. Lane eventually pled guilty to all of the accusations leveled against him. The seriousness of his offenses warranted that he be punished appropriately. The court sentenced Lane to 3 life terms without the prospect of parole, guaranteeing that he would spend the rest of his life in prison. The Chardon High School massacre rocked the foundations of the town and the nation at large, fueling personal grudges and a twisted psyche. It revealed educational institutions' vulnerability and the urgent need for stronger safety measures and mental health care for students. Number 10. Petri Kurti. Peter Kutri was just 13 years old when he became one of the UK's youngest and most vicious criminals. After a judge removed a reporting restriction order, the child was identified as Petri Kurti and he was sentenced to a minimum of 12 years in jail for the savage death of Glynis Bensley. The heinous crime was filmed on CCTV, demonstrating the degree of Corty's brutality. The CCTV footage showed Corty attacking and taking the life of Glynis Bensley, stamping her face. Following the horrible crime, the young criminal ran to a nearby park in Smethwick, West Midlands, where he brazenly boasted about the heinous attack. The overwhelming brutality of the crime shocked the community and devastated Bensley's family and friends. Zohaib Majid, Corty's co-defendant, was also found liable for his involvement in the crime. Majid received a 10-year jail term. During the sentencing, Judge John Warner emphasized Corty's turbulent past, emphasizing a lack of limits and structure in his home life. The court stated that the boy's parents failed to recognize the seriousness of his acts, transferring blame to others, and adding to his unwillingness to accept responsibility for his crimes. Corty and Majid both confused Glynis Bensley for a male owing to her attire and hairdo, according to the court. Corty was found guilty of the crime after a trial. Corty had a history of aggressive outbursts and past convictions for attempted theft, attack with intent to steal, and battery, which was troubling given his young age. These disturbing findings raise concerns about the causes that may have influenced his aggressive behavior. Glynis Bensley's senseless and terrible death left her family in mourning and seeking answers. Kevin, her brother, voiced his shock and sadness, emphasizing that Glynis had walked along that path for 30 years without incident. Losing a dear family member is never easy, regardless of the perpetrator's age. Detective Chief Inspector Sam Ridding, who led the investigation, stressed that Corty and Majid intended to use violence against whomever they targeted. Their synchronized actions, arriving at the scene within seconds of each other, were captured on CCTV. Tragically, Glynis Bensley was an unwitting victim, picked at random by the couple who mistook her for a male wearing a gold bracelet.
Hello, xin chào tất cả các bạn đã trở lại với channel Tôi Vẽ Tranh trên kênh YouTube của mình. Và trên tay mình đây là bức tranh về chú voi, và chúng ta cùng nhau tô màu cho bức tranh chú voi này nhé. Mình sẽ tô màu. Mình sẽ tô màu cho cái màu da của chú voi này bằng màu xanh là cây xanh dương này nhé. Trên tay mình là bức tranh về chú voi và hãy có thể màu cho tôi hai chú voi nhé. Và mình sẽ tô màu cho chú voi này bằng màu xanh dương này nhé. Mình sẽ tô màu xanh da trời cho màu da của chú voi này. Và phần chân của chúng nó sẽ được có chỉ màu xanh. Và để tô màu cho phần đầu thì sẽ sử dụng màu vàng. Tiếp theo, chú gấu ở bên trái phải sẽ có câu màu sau chú gấu đây. Tiếp theo là phần thân của chú voi này nhé. Phần chân của chú gấu bên phải thì sẽ sử dụng màu cam và màu xanh lam. Còn cái tay của chú gấu này thì sẽ sử dụng màu nâu để tấu cho cái tay. Và phần khuôn mặt của chú gấu bên phải thì sẽ sử dụng màu cam nhạt để tô màu cho phần khuôn mặt này nhé. Thì tô màu sắc cho cái phần chân. Tiếp theo là mình sẽ sử dụng màu xanh dương đậm hơn một chút để tô màu cho cái phần tai trong và cái phần vòi này của chú voi này nhé. Và mình đã tô màu vào phía chân để hai tí bóng đậm. Tất cả các bạn hãy theo dõi video tô màu vào chân của mình. Đây là sau một năm. Chào mừng tất cả các bạn đã đến với chuyên mục tô màu với bức tranh của mình. Trên tay mình là bức tranh về một chú gấu đang rất là xinh đẹp tại phần trên tay. Tiếp theo phần cái vòi nhé. Mình sẽ sử dụng màu cam để tô màu cho phần chân và phần thân của chú gấu này. Tiếp theo là màu nâu, màu xám cho cái móng chân. Và video tô màu cho bức tranh chú voi của mình đến đây là kết thúc nhé. Xin chào và hẹn gặp lại các bạn ở những video tiếp theo. Các bạn nhớ like và subscribe cho kênh của mình nhé. Xin chào.
A quiet Maryland suburb is rocked by a brutal double murder. To solve this case, investigators must retrace the killer's footsteps. The dead body of a missing girl is found in an Oregon highway rest area. Strange markings on the victim's arm are investigators' best hope of identifying her killer. A Minnesota man finds his estranged wife dead in her home, the apparent victim of a sexual assault. But detectives soon learn that things aren't always what they appear to be. Some crime scenes have few clues to offer. But killers always leave some trace of themselves behind. To make their case, investigators turn to forensic examiners to isolate hidden impressions and turn them into patterns of guilt.